Well, like I said, last weekend we had the state GOP convention in beautiful Cherokee, North Carolina, which if you don't know where that is, if you go about 350 miles west of here, you'll run into it. It's a big casino. A couple things that were really nice that happened. Johnson County, we actually had 6 delegates show up, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you compare us to Sampson had 1, Duplin County had 1, New Hanover had 4 delegates show up. We actually have a pretty decent turnout, all things considered. A couple interesting things that happened was, I want to say that they got the idea from us at our Reagan Day dinner, but 4 of Tom Tillis's opponents got up and gave a speech introducing him and offering their support to his candidacy to be United States Senator. And he got up and gave a real good Tillis speech. Now, one of the things that Chairman Claude Pope, chairman of the state GOP, mentioned was that the vote is over, it's time to rally behind the winner. And that's something that we've been doing here in Johnson County, and then we'll be doing statewide as well, because I don't know whichever poll or pundit you listen to, it's a dead heat right now. And anywhere from between $80 and $100 million is going to get spent on that campaign. Now, I know that in my family, my wife and I don't always see eye to eye, and I don't always see eye to eye with every candidate. So I'll give you 2 reasons why you should consider supporting Speaker Tillis. One reason is because he's a lot better than Kay Hagan. You know, that's an easy one. And the applause line in Cherokee was, if we send Tom Tillis to the United States Senate, then Harry Reid is going to be sitting in the back listening instead of talking. Now, another reason I want you to think about that's even more important is right now we got 7 people in the United States Supreme Court. 4 of them are conservative and 3 of them are liberal. Well, they're not getting any younger, especially conservatives. And the problem is that when President Obama nominates whoever will replace one of them, he can be sure it isn't going to be somebody we like. And that's why we've got to have a majority in the United States Supreme Court. Because as Susan Doyle could tell you, it literally takes a lifetime to undo things that they do. So that's why in the next 4 months we need to get out and help him. Something else about the convention too was pretty neat. We had Bobby Jindal came and gave a speech, and I'll give the guy credit for one thing. The man can wear a suit and cowboy boots and be a great speaker at the same time. He's a cover. We also had a Brunswick County delegate speak to us. And what I thought was interesting about that is the guy's name was Bill Bennett, who used to be Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Education. And if you never had an opportunity to hear him speak or read one of his books, I commend him to you. I understand that the state GOP is going to put copies of or videos of speeches that they gave on their website before too long. Also saw Governor Huckabee, he spoke as well. And I'll just leave that one at that. Finally, the next convention, let me back up. Among the business of the convention, the biggest issue was taken up, that ate up most of the time, was changing the plan of organization. That's the constitution for the party per se. And it involved how GOP officials can get involved in endorsing in primary races. There's a little bit of clarification on that because there's confusion in various counties on how it was administered, and it caused a little bit of a ruckus. Sad thing is that right as we were getting ready to deal with it, didn't have a quorum, so it's going to get kicked until September. And finally, we got one other big race that I need y'all to consider, and that's for North Carolina State Supreme Court. We have Mr. Bob Hunter, who has spoken to us before. He was politicking real hard. He's a candidate for Supreme Court. Also, Mark Martin is a candidate for Chief Justice, as well as Ola Lewis, who's running against him. You need to look in those candidates, give it a close examination, and vote accordingly. And finally, I'm sure he's out politicking, shaking hands, and kissing babies, but our own Paul Holcomb is running for a Court of Appeals. One thing that I heard from all those candidates was that they have a little bit tougher time running. Didn't like running for a house or the Senate or something like that. People don't understand judges, know one level of court from the next, don't know their names, but guess what? They run all over the state, got the same expenses, got to buy signs. So I'm sure that they would appreciate your support, both campaigning for them as well as financially. And finally, Chance Lambeth and Kim Kennedy, who are political directors for David Rouser and Tom Tilts respectively, are going to meet with us in Jackson and figure out how we're going to lay out the game plan for the upcoming election. Because Johnson County has the 8th highest population of Republicans in the state of North Carolina. And as you can imagine, with one very tight race and one race that we need to pay attention to as well, what we do in terms of knocking on doors, making phone calls, putting out signs, and getting voters involved is going to be very critical. And I want to tell you one thing, that a key element of that, for us folks sitting in the back of the room, they may be quietly sitting back there smiling and all, because teenage Republicans were an integral part of the grassroots effort here in Johnson County. And as a matter of fact, I always going to give them a hand, because let me... In case you didn't know, for example, Marquise has about 5,000 to 6,000 followers on Twitter, and when he says something, people pay attention. Not bad for a high school kid. He has a lot of pull around here. Also, too, something about our teenage Republicans that, well, I can't say I'm speechless because I'm going to talk about it, but on their own hook, instead of going out to the dance or hanging out at the football game or studying like they ought to be doing, they would actually come in on their own hook and make phone calls to support candidates for office during the primary. They organized themselves, got together, met with the people in the different campaigns, and figured out what they needed to do to help. They got walk books, and they went knocking on doors. This is all on their own hook. And I gotta tell you, I'm in awe of you guys, because man, when I was in high school, I wasn't near that squared away. I really admire that. And trust me, you guys are an important part of the family, and we really appreciate it.